Hi there, it's Tiffany from Daisy Farm Crafts, and today I'm going to do a tutorial for this throw that I have made with Bernat Forever Fleece Finer. Last year they came out with just Forever Fleece, and this year it's a little bit finer, and oh my gosh, you guys, it is so fun to work with, and the blanket is just super soft. Super soft. I really enjoyed working with this. So I used 6 skeins of this, and that would be, they have 385 yards in each skein, and this is how much I had left of the 6th one. So get 6 to be safe. The blanket is about 40 inches by 50 inches. I was trying to make it 40 by 60, but I didn't quite get there. But it's still a super nice lap blanket. So I am using a 7mm hook, which sometimes these hooks are hard to come by. It is one size larger than they recommended, and that's just due to maybe my tension. So somewhere in there, a 6mm, 7mm, to just get the right tension. So this is the ribbed border that I'll show you and the stitches. So let's get going with a small sample swatch. Okay, so this blanket starting chain is any multiple of the number 10. So I put 20 chains. I've made 20 chains. You can make this blanket any size you would like. Just start with any multiple of the number 10. We're going to begin in the second chain from the hook with a single crochet and work single crochet into each of the next 8 chains. So that will be a total of 9 single crochets. Okay, so I have 9 single crochets, and in the 10th single crochet, I want you to work a double crochet. So if you are making this larger, every 10th stitch is a double crochet. So now we'll just single crochet to the end of the row, and there should be 9 to the end of the chain here. Yes, we've got our 9. Okay, so we chained 20. We began in the second chain from the hook. That gave us essentially 19 chains to work with. Every 10th stitch is a double crochet on this base chain. Now chain 1. Now we will begin what I call the mesh stitch, or what I've learned is called the mesh stitch. So we're going to work a single crochet right into that very first single crochet stitch from the row below. Then we'll chain 1, skip the next single crochet stitch, and single crochet into the next. So let's repeat that. Chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, single crochet into the next stitch. Okay, that was 9 stitches. So instead of chaining 1, when we get to the 10th stitch, which is that double crochet from the row below, we will omit the chain 1 and work a front post double crochet around the double crochet. And that is going to give us that those nice ribs that run all the way up the blanket. Now, make sure you work into the next single crochet. So if you look on the back of your work, there will be like a little V. That's the front post. Skip that one. Work into the next single crochet. And let's begin the mesh stitch again. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. And hopefully it works out that you are skipping one and your last stitch of the row is a single crochet. Chain 1 and turn your work. Now let's work one more row so I can show you again how to make sure you don't miss that rib, the ribbing stitch, because this time it will be a back loop, or not back loop, back post, double crochet. So single crochet, chain 1. So that's like 1, number 2 stitch. Here's 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and the 9th stitch is into that single crochet, and it's almost like when it's facing on the back, you'll be able to feel that bump with your hand right there. Omit the next chain. We're going to substitute that, the 10th stitch, by yarning over, popping that double crochet post to the back of your work, and just working a regular double crochet. Now find that very next single crochet to work into. Sometimes you'll be able to tell it's got the, the 2 little V's down there. And then chain, and you're always chaining across the chains from the row below, single crocheting into the single crochets, and just lining those stitches up. And you'll see just this beautiful texture that I just thought was so pretty, even just working with this yarn. Chain 1 and turn. Always chain 1 and turn. Here we go. You can see that little rib, the rib that's starting to appear. Okay, so now you're just going to repeat that all the way. That is the main part of the blanket. The mesh stitch and a front post, double crochet on every 10th stitch. Or I guess I should just say a post double crochet, because sometimes you will be popping it to the front. Sometimes, and then you'll turn and you'll have to pop it to the back. But just keep that ribbing on the same side of the work. The back will just be plain. We won't have any of it'll just be the smooth surface for the back of the blanket. Now I can show you at the end. Okay, so I'm going to work this up a few more rows, so then I can show you how to get the border started. All right, for your blanket, you'll just work to the length that you need, but for today's sample, I'm just going to stop about right here and let me show you how I got the border started. So the first thing I did is after I finished, I chained 1 and turned, and I really want to get another round of all single crochet around it. Of course, we started with a row of single crochet because I wanted to avoid the little holes that sometimes the mesh stitch will do on just a chain. So that's why I like to start with a row of single crochets. So I'm going to finish with a row of single crochets. However, instead of doing one in the single and the chain, which kind of makes it go zigzag, it looked better to me if I went ahead and just worked 2 single crochets in that chain 1 space. So work 2 single crochets into each of those chain 1 spaces. When I get to the ribbing though, I just worked 1 single crochet on either side of the ribbing, since that technically is our chain 1 space, and then came over here to the next chain 1 space. Okay, now here I am to the corner, and there we go. I will go ahead and work into the best spot possible here. Try to at least get under 2 of those. Let's work 3 single crochets into the corner. Give us a nice getting around. And then I went ahead and did about the same thing. I like to work 2 single crochets every other row. I feel like that, as I've continued to crochet a lot, I feel like that gives us a nicer, neater appearance if all the single crochets can be worked into the same spot along the side. So two. So here I am in the corner, working my 3. And now I'm at the, I'm working on the underneath that base chain, which technically that kind of gives us 2 rows of single crochet, but it looks okay because we're going to work around the bottom of that base chain. Every other one, same thing. I just like to work 2 and then skip a stitch. Okay, it works out that I can just work my 3 around the corner. Now here I am, going to go right back up the other side. Find my spots where I want to work 2, and then skip a row. And I tend to go into those little holes that are just a little bit smaller. You know, you'll have your turning chain, end of the row, and your first stitch of the row. I tend to go into the one that is the first stitch of the row. Okay, we are back to the very first starting. Let's go ahead. Looks like we don't need much for this corner. That's always the estimate. Okay, I'm going to show you how this looks. So we kind of just evened everything up around the whole blanket. So we have 1 full round of single crochet, and that is perfect for the border that we are going to be putting on it, which is just a ribbed border. So we don't need to join the round or anything. We are going to start with 10 chains. There you go. Come up from the side. And honestly, this number, you can choose whatever number you want. It's just the width that you want for your border. 10 chains seemed to be about nice for the blanket I was making. So, but if you want it wider, if you want it smaller, this number is completely flexible. Just remember the number that you do because you want to know how many stitches you're making to the blanket. So I chain 10, I'll be making 9. I'm going to work right into the second chain from the hook, yarning over, inserting my hook, pulling back through, and pulling through the 2 chains. This is a yarn over slip stitch, or sometimes we call it a half double slip stitch because it's like you're starting a half double crochet, but instead of yarning over again like a double crochet, we're just pulling through like a slip stitch. So we've heard it called both things, so we just call it both things. Yarn over slip stitch or a half double slip stitch. This is what we're doing. So I'm working 1 in each chain all the way back to the edge of the blanket. And when I get there, I am going to slip stitch into that next stitch and the next stitch. Then I am going to, okay, so here's my blanket edge going out that way. Turn the work sort of towards you, I've found, so that you're crossing that the yarn in front of you. It makes it way easier on the return to see the stitch. So sometimes this was also a little tricky, is knowing which one is the first stitch, because remember we've got 2 slip stitches in there. So sometimes I'll just count backwards from the end. Make sure this is the 9th stitch. That becomes the first stitch of the row. And work your slip stitch. We're going to work this all the way down the end. And I am working underneath both little V's that the stitch makes. I'm not doing a back loop or a front loop or a front bottom loop. There's 3 loops you could pick from. I'm going under the top 2 V's and then pulling through. Oops. And then make sure, you know, if you have trouble, this is just count up, because sometimes this last one, it just is folded over. It's hard to see. Look for it. Make sure you get that 9th one. Just a chain 1 and turn your work back. So you can see I'm working this way across. Okay, now there's one other thing that I had to be mindful. Now, I just, sometimes it seemed to me that when I would slip stitch over 2 times, it would start pulling on the blanket. So I kind of kept an eye on that. And sometimes if it was stretching too much across the edge of the blanket, I just slip stitched over 1 time. So again, in the pattern, I'll probably say, you know, slip stitch as evenly as possible. Because, you know, it's crochet. And so what I mean by that is, like, sometimes 1 was plenty, especially on the sides of the work. Maybe the chains weren't as evenly as you thought, you know, anything can happen. So, but for right now, 2 is basically the standard. Okay, I'm just doing this really slow so you can see how to get that yarn back over there. This seemed to be the easiest way to turn it. Okay, I am going to just keep working on down, and then I'll show you how to turn the corner. Okay, I got this first side all completed. So you want to make sure you work all the way up to that corner so that you've got a fairly straight line across before we build up and work the edge across that way. So I've just right here finishing up out here, and so instead of chaining 1, I will do my 10 chains. Okay, and kind of just have it still face me. We just will start working across in the exact same way. I'll start in that second chain from the hook and just start building the second side. Okay, make sure I get my 9th chain down there. And here we go. So I slip stitch into the first one and the second one. Turn that work kind of toward me and work all the way out to the end. So now we've got that same just building in the exact same way. Let me get this final stitch done. So just turn it back. And now you can see that we're going to be working all the way across. So we work across these stitches. Do your best to, again, maybe only slip stitch 1, depends on how many stitches are in there. You're going to go all the way across to this corner, end up out here, chain, work this way. On this final side, you'll have chained out and work, and all you need to do is just work into these stitches. Your corner will be out here, and you'll stop right there. So that will be the border. And then at the very end, I will show you on this blanket, all I did was I did work a final 2 rounds of single crochet around the very edge that kind of just pulled everything together. Be very careful. I still, again, do it as evenly as possible, which turned out for me to work 2 stitches at the end of the row, skip a row, 1 stitch at the end of a row. So you don't want it. But you know what I found with this Forever fleece is that it's very forgiving. I could stretch it and get it right into place, and it looks fantastic. So I loved that. So anyway, this is how your corners will look, and just 2 rounds of single crochet at the very end, join with a slip stitch, tie off, and weave in all of your ends. So this is what I was saying. The back of the blanket is very plain. It just is the mesh stitch, and the ribbing is all on this side of the blanket. So here's those corners. They just look nice and squared off. And I think that was all that you'll need to know. The full pattern is on daisyfarmcrafts.com, where I will just have it all written out for you in case you like to do written and visual. I know sometimes that helps me too. It's just do a little bit of both. So anyway, thank you so much for coming by. I really hope you enjoy making this blanket. I cannot wait to give this to my niece. This is going to be her high school senior quilt, I guess, or senior throw. I love doing blankets like this for the kids that are headed off to college. So you have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.